It
Have you
took me
ever
20
wondered,
years to
what
realize
is
what
the
I'll
meaning
tell
of
you in
life
32
when
minutes.
everything ends in death? Leo Tolstoy, one of the greatest writers in history, had everything that most people spend their lives chasing: wealth, recognition, a loving family, and a literary legacy that cemented his name in history. His novels, War and Peace and Anna Karenina, were hailed as masterpieces, admired by both intellectuals and common readers alike. But at the peak of his success, he was struck by a question, one so deep that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of his existence. What is the meaning of life if everything ends in death? This question was not just a passing philosophical curiosity, it became an existential crisis that consumed him entirely. Every morning, he woke up with a sense of dread, haunted by the realization that no matter how much he achieved, no matter how much he loved or was loved, death would eventually erase it all. So, what is the real purpose of life? Tolstoy compared his life to a traveler lost in a forest, running from an inevitable beast, death, while clinging desperately to a fragile branch above a deep abyss. His success, though admirable, brought no comfort. It only intensified the void within him. Let's explore Tolstoy's painful journey and the profound answer he ultimately found to the question of life's meaning. Continue reading and discover how he transformed his despair into a valuable lesson about life and death. How could it be that a man who had everything felt like he had nothing? What was the point of all his achievements if, in the grand scheme of things, they were destined to disappear? This was not just Tolstoy's question. It is the unspoken fear that lingers in the minds of countless people who have reached their goals, only to find themselves even more lost than before. Tolstoy sought refuge in intellectual pursuits, turning to philosophy, science, and logic in search of answers. He studied the works of great thinkers like Schopenhauer, Kant, and existentialists, hoping that their wisdom would provide a sense of direction. Yet the more he read, the deeper his despair grew. Philosophy dissected life, analyzed morality, and debated the nature of existence. But none of it offered a solution that truly satisfied him. Science was even more unforgiving, reducing life to a mere accident of biology, governed by cold, indifferent laws of nature. He realized that reason alone could not answer the question that tormented him. Why do we live if we must inevitably die? Rationality, instead of alleviating his suffering, only amplified his anguish. If everything is destined to end, if every love, every joy, every triumph will be wiped away by time, then what purpose could there possibly be? Tolstoy saw two logical responses to this dilemma: either to accept that life was ultimately meaningless and resign himself to despair, or to end his own life to escape the unbearable absurdity of existence. He was drawn to the latter, admitting in his confession that he had to hide ropes from himself and avoid carrying a gun, for fear he might act on his suicidal thoughts. This was not mere dramatic exaggeration. It was the logical consequence of his realization that, in a purely rational framework, life had no ultimate meaning. But despite his despair, he clung to life. Something within him refused to accept that meaning was just an illusion. And so, instead of surrendering, he turned his gaze towards something he had long ignored: people who lived without wealth, without fame, without intellectual sophistication, yet somehow seemed at peace. As Tolstoy observed the world around him, he became increasingly fascinated by the lives of simple, working-class people: farmers, laborers, craftsmen. These were individuals who, by all rational measures, should have been more despairing than him. They had no luxuries, no great intellectual achievements, no lasting legacy, and yet they lived with quiet contentment, accepting life as it was, embracing its struggles and joys with a sense of purpose that eluded him. What did they know that he didn't? Unlike the intellectual elite, these people did not seek meaning through abstract reasoning or philosophical speculation. They lived it. They found it in their families, in their traditions, in their connection to the land and to each other. They did not ask whether life had meaning, they simply lived as if it did. Tolstoy was struck by the realization that these people did not need the kind of certainty he had been desperately chasing. They embraced mystery, they accepted suffering, and most importantly, they did not fear death in the same way he did. Their faith in something greater than themselves, whether it was God, tradition, or the natural rhythm of life, gave them a sense of purpose that he, despite all his knowledge and success, had never truly experienced. For years, Tolstoy had sought answers in places where they could never be found. He had believed that meaning had to be a logically provable concept, something that could be written in a book or explained by a philosopher. But now he realized that meaning was not an intellectual construct, it was a lived experience. This revelation did not come as a sudden epiphany, but rather as a slow transformation. The more time he spent with simple people, the more he saw that their peace was not rooted in material success or intellectual superiority, but in their ability to surrender to life rather than resist it. They embraced something greater than themselves, whether it was faith, love, or a sense of duty, and in doing so, they were freed from the existential torment that had nearly destroyed him. Tolstoy began to see that the real illusion was not meaninglessness, but the belief that meaning could only exist if it was absolute, eternal, and logically irrefutable. He realized that life did not need to be justified by reason alone. It could be justified by love, by connection, by the simple act of living fully. This realization marked the beginning of a profound shift in his philosophy, one that would lead him to renounce his former values and seek a deeper, more authentic way of living. But his journey was far from over. The next question was inevitable. If wealth, fame, and intellectual achievement had failed him, then what was truly worth pursuing? So Tolstoy delved even deeper into the unknown, searching for an answer that could finally bring him the peace he had been seeking his entire life. At first glance, Tolstoy's life appeared to be a portrait of fulfillment. He had risen from the nobility to become one of the most celebrated writers in history. His books were read widely across Europe, admired by intellectuals, and hailed as some of the greatest literary works ever written. His wealth provided him with a comfortable life, far removed from the struggles of ordinary people. His name carried weight, and his influence extended beyond literature into politics and philosophy. If there was ever a man who had every reason to feel satisfied, it was him, and yet he was drowning in despair. The more success he attained, the more hollow it felt. He compared his life to a man running toward a mirage, believing he was about to reach an oasis, only to find nothing but sand slipping through his fingers. He had achieved everything that society told him was valuable. Yet instead of fulfillment, he found only emptiness. His books, his legacy, his fame, none of it answered the question that haunted him. Why does any of this matter if death will erase it all? The illusion that success would bring meaning shattered before his eyes. He realized that his achievements were like castles built on the shore, beautiful yet fragile, destined to be washed away by time. This understanding did not come as an intellectual insight, but as an existential wound that grew deeper with each passing day. He could not escape it, nor could he rationalize it away. His life had become a contradiction, externally prosperous, but internally crumbling. And worst of all, he knew he was not alone in this. The world was full of people chasing the same illusions, hoping that the next milestone, the next victory, the next moment of recognition would finally bring them the peace they so desperately sought. Tolstoy began to suspect a painful truth. Perhaps the things we are told to strive for are not the things that actually give life meaning. Determined to find an answer, Tolstoy did what he had always done best. He turned to deep analysis. If his own achievements had failed to provide meaning, perhaps the accomplishments of humanity as a whole could offer insight. He studied the greatest contributions of civilization: art, science, philosophy, politics, searching for some thread of meaning that could justify human existence. Yet the more he examined these grand achievements, the more he saw their limitations. Science could explain how the world worked, but it could not explain why it existed in the first place. Art could express beauty and suffering, but it could not resolve the fundamental absurdity of life. Philosophy could question reality and construct elaborate systems of thought, but no philosopher had ever truly answered the question that tormented him. Why live if life is destined to end? Even morality, the foundation of human ethics, seemed powerless against the inevitability of death. If all human efforts were temporary, if every civilization eventually collapsed, if every human achievement faded into dust, then was it not all just a futile attempt to distract ourselves from the inescapable truth? Tolstoy saw that even the greatest minds of history had faced the same existential abyss, and none had conquered it. Some had accepted life's absurdity and lived as if meaning did not matter. Others had sought comfort in fleeting pleasures, but none of these answers satisfied him. He did not want an illusion. He wanted the truth, no matter how painful. And the truth, as it appeared to him at that moment, was terrifying. Human progress had given us knowledge, power, and art, but it had not given us meaning. If neither individual success nor collective achievement could provide the answer, then where else was there to look? Tolstoy began to reflect on those around him: his peers, the intellectuals, the artists, the aristocrats. Many of them lived in a state of quiet despair, though few admitted it openly. Some drowned their emptiness in indulgence, others in endless distractions. But beneath their polished exteriors, there was an unspoken truth. They were just as lost as he was. He saw it in the eyes of his fellow writers, men who had achieved literary immortality but lived in restless anxiety, fearing their next work would not measure up. He saw it in the noblemen who owned vast estates but spent their days trapped in a cycle of excess and boredom. He saw it in the scholars who prided themselves on their intellect yet found no real joy in their discoveries. These were people who had everything society deemed valuable: money, status, admiration, but they wandered through life as if searching for something they could never quite grasp. The most terrifying realization was that many of them had stopped searching altogether. They had accepted their emptiness as the natural state of life and resigned themselves to it. However, Tolstoy could not accept that answer. He refused to believe that life was nothing more than an elaborate performance, that the only options were distraction or despair. If there was no meaning in the world of success, then meaning had to exist somewhere else. But where? It was in this desperate search that Tolstoy began to look beyond his social class. If wealth and prestige had failed to provide an answer, perhaps the key lay in those who lived outside the illusions of privilege. He turned his gaze toward the working class, those who labored in the fields, who built homes with their hands, who lived without the comfort of intellectual justifications. These were people who, by all logic, should have been even more despairing than him. They had none of the luxuries, none of the status, none of the recognition he had spent his life accumulating. And yet something about them was different. They were not consumed by the same existential dread. They did not wake up in terror at the thought of death. They did not seem to question their own existence with the same agonizing doubt. Instead, they lived with a quiet acceptance, a deep-seated peace that eluded even the greatest minds of Tolstoy's generation. He was struck by the contrast. Why did the privileged, the intellectuals, and the accomplished suffer from existential despair, while those with the least seemed to carry themselves with a calm certainty? What did these simple people know that he didn't? At first, Tolstoy assumed their simplicity was a form of ignorance, that they didn't question life because they lacked the intellectual tools to do so. But the more he observed them, the more he realized that their peace did not come from a lack of understanding. It came from a wisdom far deeper than anything he had encountered in books. Tolstoy began to immerse himself in their world. He spent time with farmers who labored from dawn until dusk, with craftsmen who shaped wood or metal with their hands, with mothers who carried generations forward through love and sacrifice. These people lived by an unspoken philosophy, not one written in books, but practiced in their daily lives. They did not agonize over meaning because their lives were intertwined with it. Their purpose was not an abstract concept. It was lived through action, through duty, through relationships. A farmer did not ask whether life had meaning. He simply woke up and tended his fields. A mother did not question whether love was real. She simply embraced her child. A craftsman did not debate whether his work was important. He simply shaped wood or metal into something useful. Their wisdom was not intellectual, but experiential. While the intellectual class debated the purpose of existence, these people lived it. They found meaning not in grand theories, but in the simple rhythms of life, in the changing of the seasons, in the birth of a child, in the passing of traditions from one generation to the next. Their philosophy was not one of words, but of being. Tolstoy realized that their way of life held an answer he had long overlooked. Meaning is not something to be found through logic. It is something to be lived. There was another aspect of their lives that fascinated Tolstoy: their faith. Nearly without exception, these simple people believed in something greater than themselves, whether it was God, folk traditions, or an unwavering trust in the order of the universe. They lived with an innate sense of connection to the divine. They didn't see themselves as isolated individuals, struggling to create meaning out of nothing. They saw themselves as part of a larger whole, woven into the fabric of existence itself. For years, Tolstoy had dismissed religion as a collection of outdated myths, useful only for those unable to face the harsh realities of life. But now, he began to see it differently. These people didn't use faith as an escape. They used it as an anchor. Their belief in God, in moral duty, in the sacredness of life, gave them a strength that no philosophy had ever given him. They didn't fear death in the way he had, because they saw life as part of something eternal. Their faith was not built on theological arguments or philosophical proofs. It was something they simply lived. To them, belief wasn't an intellectual choice. It was as natural as breathing. They didn't struggle to define meaning because they embodied it. Tolstoy found himself deeply moved by this realization. Could it be that the very thing he had rejected for so many years was the key to the peace he had been seeking? This discovery marked a turning point in Tolstoy's life. He had always believed that true understanding could only come through intellectual rigor, through reason and logic. But now he realized that there was another form of knowledge, one that couldn't be written down or analyzed, but only experienced. These simple people had shown him a truth he had long ignored. Meaning is not something that can be solved like a mathematical equation. It's something that emerges when one surrenders to life, rather than trying to control it. It is found not in endless questioning, but in the act of living with purpose, love, and faith. Tolstoy's crisis had led him to the edge of despair, but in the lives of those he had once overlooked, he found something unexpected: hope. Not the kind of hope that comes from temporary distractions or intellectual justifications, but the quiet, steady kind that allows people to wake up each day and continue forward, even in the face of suffering. He began to see that perhaps the answer to the meaning of life was not hidden in the complexities of philosophy, but in the simplicity of existence itself. With this realization, he stood on the threshold of a new understanding, one that would change the course of his life forever. For years, Tolstoy had searched for meaning in wealth, fame, and intellectual pursuits, only to find them empty. He had turned to the great thinkers of history, hoping that philosophy or science would offer a satisfying answer. But none had. He had even reached the edge of despair, wondering if life was nothing more than a cruel joke, one that inevitably ended in death. But his journey had taken an unexpected turn. The answer he had spent years searching for was not hidden in complex theories or intellectual debates. It was not something that had to be discovered at all. It was something that had always been there, waiting to be seen. Tolstoy's revelation was simple, yet profound. The meaning of life is not found in thought. It is found in experience, not in the mind, but in the heart, not in the pursuit of personal greatness, but in connection with others, with the world, and with something greater than oneself. The philosophers and intellectuals of his time had tried to construct meaning through logic, but logic alone had failed him. The simple people, the farmers, the laborers, had shown him something deeper. Their lives were not built around personal ambition, but around duty, love, and faith. They didn't analyze meaning. They lived it. And in doing so, they possessed a peace that he had never truly felt. Tolstoy realized that he had been searching for something that could never be grasped by thought alone. Meaning was not a puzzle to be solved. It was a reality to be lived. And the more he embraced this idea, the more the despair that had once consumed him began to fade. With this realization, Tolstoy underwent a profound transformation. He abandoned the belief that individual achievements could bring lasting fulfillment. He no longer saw himself as an isolated being, trying to create meaning out of nothing. Instead, he saw himself as part of a greater whole, woven into the fabric of existence. He began to view life not as a quest for personal success, but as an opportunity to serve, to love, and to contribute to something beyond himself. Tolstoy turned away from the empty pursuits that had once defined his world: the hunger for recognition, the need to leave a legacy, the obsession with intellectual superiority. Without these things, he found a deeper meaning in the simplest aspects of existence. He wrote about this transformation in A Confession, a book that laid bare his existential crisis and the journey that led him out of it. He described how he had once believed that meaning had to be created by the individual, only to realize that it had always existed. It was simply a matter of seeing it. Life, he concluded, was not an intellectual riddle to be solved. It was an act of surrender. Tolstoy's revelation was not just personal, it reshaped his entire worldview. His later works took on a different tone. While his earlier novels explored the complexities of human nature, his later writings sought to strip life down to its essence. He became deeply concerned with moral and spiritual questions, often clashing with the Russian Orthodox Church and the aristocracy, as he championed ideas of simplicity, humility, and nonviolence. He renounced his former wealth and began dressing like a peasant. He gave away much of his property, lived modestly, and advocated for the rights of the poor. He no longer believed in the power of institutions or governments to create a just world, but in the power of individuals to live with integrity and love. Tolstoy's final years were marked by a radical commitment to his newfound philosophy. He rejected the trappings of privilege and embraced a way of life that mirrored the wisdom of the simple people he had once overlooked. In doing so, he found something he had never felt in his years of success: peace. He no longer feared death because he no longer saw himself as separate from life itself. He had let go of the illusion of control and embraced the truth that meaning was not something to be achieved, but something to be lived. Tolstoy's journey is one that speaks to the deepest fears and longings of the human heart. In an age where we are constantly told that meaning comes from personal success, from recognition, from intellectual mastery, his story offers a different perspective. It suggests that perhaps meaning is not something we have to chase. Perhaps it is already here, in the smallest, most ordinary moments of life, in the love we give, in the kindness we show, in the simple act of being present. Tolstoy's revelation was not the answer he had expected. It was not a grand philosophical theory, nor a secret formula for happiness. It was instead a truth so simple that it had been overlooked. Life's meaning is not in what we think. It's in how we live. As Tolstoy embraced this new understanding, he found that the existential void that had once consumed him began to fade. He no longer felt the desperate need to prove his worth through accomplishments or recognition. He began to see that true peace does not come from external success, but from an inner sense of harmony and purpose, a deep connection to the world and others. In the years that followed, Tolstoy's life took a radical turn. He fully committed himself to a simpler, more authentic existence. He left behind his former wealth and status, choosing instead to live humbly, with a deep sense of responsibility to the people around him. He dedicated himself to the service of others, advocating for the rights of the poor and the oppressed. His focus shifted from the pursuit of intellectual or material success to the pursuit of a life rooted in love, faith, and moral integrity. As he continued to write, his later works took on a different tone. The complexity and depth of his earlier novels gave way to more straightforward, spiritually charged writings. His personal transformation was reflected in his philosophy, one that called for a rejection of societal values centered around power, prestige, and wealth, and an embrace of simplicity, humility, and the inherent value of every human being. He saw the importance of living for something greater than oneself, in service to others, and to a higher calling. Tolstoy's spiritual awakening did not come easily. It was a long, painful process that required him to question everything he once believed. Yet through this journey, he discovered the truth that had eluded him for so long. Life's meaning is not something to be found through intellectual debate or material achievement. It is lived through everyday actions, through love, through connection, and through the acceptance of life as it is. His journey serves as a profound reminder to us all. In a world that often encourages us to measure our worth by our success, our possessions, or our recognition, Tolstoy's transformation shows us that real fulfillment comes not from what we achieve, but from how we live. True meaning is found in our relationships, our compassion for others, and in our ability to live with purpose, even in the face of uncertainty and suffering. In the end, Tolstoy's journey was not about finding the perfect answer to the question of life's meaning. It was about embracing life itself, the full spectrum of human experience, with all its joys, sorrows, and uncertainties, and finding peace in the understanding that meaning is not something to be chased, but something to be lived. This is the timeless lesson that his life and work offer to all of us: to live with authenticity, with love, and with a deep connection to the world around us. As you reflect on Tolstoy's journey, ask yourself, how can you begin to live a life of deeper meaning? What can you do today to embrace simplicity, to serve others, and to find purpose in the everyday moments that make up your life? The answers, as Tolstoy discovered, are not hidden in the distant future, but in the present, in the way we choose to live each and every day. Tolstoy's life, especially in his later years, serves as a powerful call to action for anyone struggling with the overwhelming complexities of life. His profound shift in perspective challenges the modern obsession with success, wealth, and recognition, urging us to reconsider the true sources of fulfillment. Instead of tirelessly chasing after fleeting achievements, Tolstoy found that peace came not from external validation, but from living with authenticity, kindness, and moral clarity. His transformation revealed a crucial insight. True meaning does not come from what we do or accumulate, but from who we are, how we treat others, and the way we live our lives in relation to the world around us. For Tolstoy, the pursuit of personal greatness gave way to a higher calling, the quest to serve others, to love, and to contribute to something greater than himself. This shift of focus from self-centered success to a more communal, selfless existence was the foundation of his later works and his enduring legacy. As you consider the impact of Tolstoy's journey on your own life, think about the values that truly matter to you. Do you prioritize success, fame, and material wealth? Or do you find deeper meaning in connection, love, and service to others? What would happen if you chose to shift your focus from what you want to achieve to how you can contribute to the lives of those around you? Tolstoy's story reminds us that life is not a race to the finish line, but a journey to be fully embraced, one filled with both hardship and joy. By accepting life's inherent unpredictability and allowing ourselves to live with purpose and compassion, we can transform our own experiences into something meaningful, just as Tolstoy did. So, as you reflect on the lessons from his life, take a moment to consider how you might approach your own existence differently. What small changes can you make today to start living a life of greater meaning and purpose? Whether it's reaching out to a friend in need, serving your community, or simply finding peace in the quiet moments of life. Remember, the real measure of our lives is not in what we achieve, but in how we choose to live each day. Tolstoy's journey was not just about finding answers. It was about embracing life with all its complexities and contradictions. In doing so, he found a deep, lasting peace that transcended everything he had once thought important. And that is a legacy worth striving for, a lesson we can all carry with us as we navigate our own paths in life. Tolstoy's story is not just one of personal transformation. It's a timeless reminder of how we might each find deeper meaning in our own lives. His journey teaches us that true fulfillment doesn't lie in external accomplishments or in the accolades of others, but in the inner peace that comes from living with authenticity, humility, and love. So often, we find ourselves chasing after the wrong things, believing that success, status, and wealth will bring us the happiness we seek. But Tolstoy's path shows us that the real treasure lies in the simplest, most human experiences, the ones that are often overlooked in our quest for more. Whether it's in the bonds we form with others, the quiet moments of reflection, or the acts of kindness we give and receive, meaning is found in the moments that make up our everyday lives. And as we face our own existential questions, the doubts, the fears, and the uncertainty about what truly matters, Tolstoy's insight encourages us to look within. It challenges us to reflect on our own values and priorities. Are we chasing after fleeting goals, or are we living in alignment with what brings us true peace? The answers may not always be clear, but the journey of self-discovery and embracing life with purpose is what ultimately leads us to fulfillment. As you continue on your own path, remember Tolstoy's transformation, how he moved from despair to a quiet, powerful understanding of life's purpose. If you find yourself lost, struggling to find meaning, take a step back and ask yourself the simple yet profound questions that Tolstoy grappled with. What really matters? How can I live a life that's authentic, meaningful, and full of purpose? In the end, the greatest lesson of Tolstoy's life is that meaning is not something to be found. It's something to be lived. Embrace each moment, live fully with love and compassion, and in doing so, you'll find that the true richness of life is right there with you, in every breath and every step you take. As you reflect on this, consider what small changes you can make today to align your life with these deeper truths. What would it look like for you to begin living in a way that's more connected to the world around you? What will it take to shift from simply achieving to truly living with purpose? The journey of self-discovery and understanding may be long, but like Tolstoy, you too can transform your life, finding peace, meaning, and joy, not in the things you achieve, but in the way you choose to live. As you continue on your own journey, remember that the search for meaning is not a solitary quest. Tolstoy's realization that meaning lies in connection, service, and living authentically is a path available to all of us. We don't have to wait for a moment of crisis or despair to ask ourselves these essential questions about our lives. We can begin today. Reflect on the relationships you nurture, the work you do, and the way you engage with the world around you. Are you living in a way that resonates with your values? Are you making time for the things that matter most? Love, family, community, and kindness. By asking yourself these questions, you take the first steps toward finding your own path to meaning. True peace doesn't come from what we achieve externally, but from how we experience the world internally. Like Tolstoy, we all face moments of doubt and existential questioning. But it's in these very moments that we have the opportunity to choose a new way of living, a life centered around authenticity, connection, and purpose. Embrace the simplicity of living fully. The joy doesn't come from the complexity of life's grand plans or accomplishments, but from the daily moments of being present. Whether it's a quiet conversation, helping a neighbor, or taking a moment to appreciate the beauty around you. As Tolstoy's story shows, it's the simple, honest moments that hold the greatest power to bring fulfillment. The questions about life's meaning are not meant to overwhelm us. They are invitations to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world. Rather than looking for answers in books or theories, the answers are found through living consciously, embracing life's challenges, and opening ourselves to the love and connection that already exists around us. If you're feeling lost or unsure, don't be discouraged. Just as Tolstoy found his way, after years of searching, you too can find clarity in the quiet moments of reflection. The key is to listen to your heart, to be kind to yourself, and to trust that meaning will unfold when you are fully present in the act of living. Your journey to peace and fulfillment doesn't have to be complicated. It's about living in alignment with your true values, seeking connection with others, and recognizing that every moment has the potential to be meaningful. As you go forward, remember, just like Tolstoy discovered, life's true meaning is not found in distant achievements, but in how you choose to live right now. So take a moment today to slow down, breathe deeply, and reflect on the things that matter most to you. What small step can you take today that will bring you closer to living a life of purpose and connection? The journey of living meaningfully starts with a single step, and you can begin today. Tolstoy's discovery was not the answer he had expected. It wasn't a grand philosophical theory or a secret formula for happiness. Instead, it was a truth so simple that it had been overlooked. The meaning of life is not what we think, but how we live. If this video has moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This really helps bring these deep conversations to more people. We explore profound questions about philosophy, self-discovery, and the human experience every day, so make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Thank you for being a part of this journey. See you in the next video.